You think you know me.
And away we go.
You're listening to Live on Four Legs, the live Pearl Jam podcast experience, featuring
Mr. Stone Gossard. Fucking Cameron in the drum. Mr. Boom Gasper. You can call me Al, you can call me Ed, you just fucking call me, why don't you?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Live on Four Legs, the definitive live Pearl Jam podcast. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, we are a Pearl Jam podcast that focuses primarily on their live history. So we will take something, a live show from 1995 or 2003, and we will go through, talk about the history of what was going on with the band at the time, talk about the tracks that they were playing live and dissect the set list, and talk about how good some of the versions of the songs are. So I know a lot of people that are tuning in for our guest today. So if you are as much of a wrestling fan as you are a Pearl Jam fan, you might want to check out some past episodes. They're all in our archive on Apple and Spotify podcast. You can check them out pretty much anywhere that you do get your podcast. So I'm Randy Sobel. That's John Farrar. And
hello.
John is not a wrestling fan.
Not at all. Yeah.
But we're about to talk to a guy that's been in wrestling for years and years and years. So how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I can't talk wrestling with anyone, but I can talk Pearl Jam with anyone. And our guest today likes to talk Pearl Jam, so that worked out fine for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're going to have a really good time talking to him. And he has a lot to say. And he's as much of a fan as anybody that else that comes on the podcast to talk about the show that are just fans. So, you know, it's talking to a WWE Hall of Famer, but it's also talking to somebody that, you know, has been to San Diego 2009 in the crowd with everybody else mixed up, Greenville 2016 mixed up with everybody else. So, you know, it's a fan conversation, and I think you guys are going to really enjoy this episode. But also keep in mind that right now on Patreon we actually have an extra episode featuring stuff that didn't make this episode with Edge, and you'll get to hear
we went for a long time with him. There's going to be a lot of good stories in there.
Yeah, so you'll hear his favorite songs, his wife's favorite song. You know, you'll get to hear what Christian's favorite songs are. All different things that you might want to know about Edge and Pearl Jam. You can check it out on our Patreon page at patreon.com/liveonfourlegs. Any contribution from $1 up will get you every exclusive episode, including our Evolution episodes and Bridge School episodes that we've been doing as a series lately. And if you want to check us out on social media, we are on Facebook, we are on Twitter, we are on Instagram at Live on Four Legs Pod or Live on Four Legs Podcast. You can check us out. Or if you're not on social media, send us an email at liveonfourlegspodcast to get in touch with us and let us know what you think. All right, without further ado, everybody, let's get to our guest for today. He is a multiple-time WWE champion as well as a WWE Hall of Famer. He is a former tag team champion. The list goes on. Money in the Bank winner, King of the Ring. He has his own show on the WWE Network called The Edge and Christian, show that totally reeks of awesomeness. And he has a podcast as well that he used to do that you can listen to back in Apple or Spotify, The Edge and Christian Pod of Awesomeness. I introduce you, Adam Copeland, aka Edge, to the podcast. Hello, sir. Welcome, and thank you very much for coming on.
Hello, good sirs. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and the first time that we started talking, this is actually kind of funny how we got to talking, because I had missed for like the third consecutive time you did on the podcast. You guys did a mailbag, and I said I really want to ask him questions about Pearl Jam and just like what his favorite songs are. So I tweet the Edge and Christian podcast account. I'm like, I missed it again, and then you ended up following the podcast Twitter account, and then I had the guts to DM you, and here we are. So again, thank you very much for coming on, and let's talk about Pearl Jam. We got all night to do this.
Yeah, it's one of those rare occasions when social media isn't annoying. So this is super exciting for me because for me, Pearl Jam. I don't know. Here's the thing with Pearl Jam. I feel like I've grown up with them. They're 5 years older than me, or 10 years older, but I feel like they're singing about things and writing about things that I can relate to because I'm going through them as well. And when I first heard 10, it just connected with me, and it resonated with me in such a way that I'm a teenager just moving into adulthood, and it just resonated with everything that I felt at that time. There was some anger, but there was introspection. There was just so much going on. And I didn't hear that from a lot of other bands. There was some great music, don't get me wrong. But they just had a layer to their songwriting that, let alone what they were doing musically, that it really just connected with me. And I still remember to this day, I had a job. I worked in this parking lot of a horse race track. So this is up in Canada, and I sat in this little wooden shack. There's no heat. You'd be there in the middle of winter, and I had this little kerosene lamp as my source of heat. I'd do my homework. I had my little orange Walkman, and I had my clear Pearl Jam 10 cassette. And I just would flip, straight through. That was the soundtrack to getting through that job, which was the job that helped me save for my first car, it's just such a seminal album for me because it truly felt like this was the time when I was finishing high school. Okay, now what's next? I want to be a wrestler, but how do I do this? They were the soundtrack for all of that. And they continued to be the soundtrack as life got insane. And I was on the road 250 days a year and started to see this dream come to fruition. They were the constant for me. So that's why they will always, just hold such a revered spot in my my list of bands and music. And if you hop in my car, it's going to be on Sirius 22. It's just the way it is. And my wife knows it, and she has fully accepted it. And she knows that if I end up driving the vehicle, then it's going to go to 22. And I don't know if she fully grasps how I can listen to them so often. But then I just say to her, well, you know how you are with Queen? Well, that's how I am with Pearl Jam.
That's right. Everybody has their fandom that they attach themselves to. And I get into this, this very narrow scope of music where sometimes I don't want to follow the new bands that are out there. I am falling back to Pearl Jam because I know that's a comfort zone for me. And I know that the discography is so huge that I can go and I can say, well, I haven't listened to Binaural in a while. I haven't listened to Backspacer in a while. This feels kind of fresh to me now.
Yeah. It's funny. You'll a certain album, a certain song, a certain era will just suddenly strike a chord again, or bring you back to that space, or whatever it is, and then suddenly I'm like, I need to hear 10 again, or I want to listen to singles, and I just want to hear State of Love and Trust and crank the shit out of it.
Yes,
and that's what's great about a band that has such a history, and such a rich history too. And again, continue to write things that I can relate to. If I go to Lightning Bolt and I hear Future Days, I'm like, yep, I totally get it. That's how I feel about my wife. And it just so happens that I was able to be around at a time when a band like that, who stuck to their core values and sing about things that they're going through that, we at our age are probably going through as well.
Sure. I think the best example of that is how early on, even before Versus came out, Leash was such a pivotal song for them. It was the anger and angst anthem of the youth. And then, they drop it live for about 12 years or so. And, it comes back, but the songs that are around when it comes back are more, songs talking about protest and songs talking about a little bit about the government and, family and things and other ideas. But again, like you said, you're growing with it, and those are still things that you can relate to as time goes on. You're not in that mindset of, hey, I'm still angry, but you can kind of, when it comes on, you can flash back to that and still hang with it.
Yeah, and I can still relate to Drop the Leash, and I the songs where like in the PJ20, The Power of No, and just where they were at that time, because I've had instances like that where I, within my career, had to go no, and I need to make a firm line in the sand here and know that it's okay. And then I watched that documentary and I'm like, yes, okay, I'm not the only one feeling this way, and caught up in this maelstrom of shit sometimes, and it's okay to say no, and there's power in that. They're just really, they resonate with me on so many levels. They really do. And even further back, like if I look at the Mama Son songs, and hearing Release and just being able to relate, because I never met my dad either. So for me, that really, really hit me. And even the song, even Alive, and just some of the lyrics in that, maybe that's one reason that from the get-go, it struck me.
Sure.
So there's just so many parallels that I can point to and draw from with Pearl Jam.
Do you have like touchstones that you remember from the early 90s? Like a lot of people talk about like seeing them on Saturday Night Live, listening to the Fox Theater show, listening to Self Pollution Radio. Do you have those touchstones that you remember from the early 90s that kind of like cemented your fandom?
It was truly cemented, like I said, sitting in that little shack. It was me and it was Pearl Jam. They were my company. And you get some minus 30 degrees Celsius weather and you're sitting in a little shack and they're my best friends. You know what I mean? Like they got me through it. And then I can say that throughout the years, they got me through long flights, or they got me through long drives, or they just got me through some really turbulent times throughout my career and in life. But for me, really, when I remember I had just started college and Versus was about to come out, and I was so amped up and just so stoked to get it. And I just couldn't wait to get my hands on it. And I remember I was living with 4 other guys in this townhouse down in Toronto. And I went out, I got it like the morning that it came out. And I went back home, I put it on. I'll never forget, I had this 3-disc changer. And so I put it in and I just sat back, and I had a Pearl Jam poster on the wall, and I had a waterbed at this point.
Good for the back.
Yeah, just great. And I just remember it playing, and I listened to it all the way through, and I had to listen to it again right away. And I didn't skip to a different song. Like it was one of those albums for me that every time I hear it, I need to listen to it all the way through. Now, like I said, if I'm listening to the Series 22 and I don't know, something pops on, then I can. But I really love sitting down and listening to that album all the way through, the way it was meant to be heard and the way that they envisioned it to be heard. And it really just, it pulls me right back to that time, and just how manic the Pearl Jam hysteria was at that point.
Sure.
Because that was that was the Time magazine, that was the Marc Jacobs grunge clothing line. That was it was all 900,000 copies in the first week. It was just, that was such a crazy time. But what I really appreciated going forward was that they didn't try to cater to that. They did what they wanted to do, and I really, man, that's when it was fully cemented for me. I think, you don't release Black as a single, and any other band in the world, in the history of the world, maybe not the Beatles, just because they had so much to choose from, but what other band isn't going to release that as a single?
I think the story is the record company tried to get them to do it. They said it's going to be bigger than Alive, it's going to be bigger than Jeremy, it's going to be the biggest thing, and they just flat out refused to do it.
And it would have, but I appreciate that they did that, because they and whether you hear whether Stone had a different vision and maybe Jeff had a different vision, but Eddie had that vision, and I think we can all look back now and say he was right.
Sure.
It's just because they've stuck to their principles all the way through, even when it's not popular, even when they play Bush Leaguer and Nassau Coliseum and they get spatterings of booze, but they still stuck to it. And you have to appreciate a band that will do that, because there's so many other forms of entertainment, so many other musicians, so many that just go with the trend, and they never did. And they set the trend at a certain point, but then they went, well, we don't want to do that. And I really, really appreciated that about them, the integrity.
We talk about it so much. I mean, how many shows do we get, John, that 1995 shows it's in the middle of the Ticketmaster dispute, and they're playing fairgrounds and not places like Madison Square Garden that are Ticketmaster outlets. And we also talk about the music video stuff a lot. They're not putting out music videos. It's 1993 through 1996, and that's how you get popular. It's not radio anymore. It's MTV. It's music videos, and they're not doing that. You're right. They're doing things their own way, and I think it struck a chord with a lot of people, and that's why they've really kept this fan base, and that's kind of why they've really become the Grateful Dead of this era now, that people still 20 to it's 30 years later. I can't believe I'm even saying it, but it's PJ30's 30 years later, and people are still, I'm going to Amsterdam this summer, like just to see them. And, I never would have thought that I would be doing that, but, I would kind of go to hell if they were playing,
Yeah. It's like, I will make trips just to see shows, and I can't say that. I can't say that about any other band, honestly. If it happens to be I'm in a city and okay, so and so's playing, cool, let's go check it out. But I will make a point to make trips specifically just for that, and then add other things. But that's the central purpose.
How many times have you gone to see them so far?
So let's see. What is strange about my journey with them is that throughout all the years that I was on the road with the WWE, I didn't really get to see them because we're touring and we don't have an off season. We don't have an album cycle. It's Groundhog Day. It's Groundhog Decade. So I started on the road in 1997. I didn't get off the road until 2011. And throughout that time, I was on the road 250 days a year. So it didn't leave time to do anything. I finally, I got a chance to see them for the first time, and it was on the Backspacer tour. And I had torn my Achilles, and that was the only reason I had a chance to see them. I tore my Achilles. I saw they were going to be in San Diego at the Viejas Arena, and I went, you know what? I got a cast on. I'm flying out there. I'm finally going to see Pearl Jam.
Wow.
And I went and saw them in San Diego, and I know the ties that San Diego has to the band and vice versa. Mm-hmm. And I just thought that'd be a really special place to see them for the first time. Short of Seattle, it felt like and maybe Chicago, closest to, and Big Sandy, I guess, but just closest to that kind of hometown feel or a special feel. And I really wanted one of those as my first show to go see them. And I had a handicap seat. I had my foot up on the railing, and this big old cast, foot was throbbing, but I didn't give a shit. It was amazing. And they were so good. They were just in the pocket, just it's just so good. And I love that album. So it all just it was really, I would have loved to see them, in like 93. But it just didn't work out that way because I was a kid sitting in a wooden shack. So I finally got to see them in 2009, and that's when I went, okay, this has to happen more often. I need to do this, because for that entire show, I sang at the top of my lungs. And the great part was everyone else was too. And that's the first concert where I was like, oh, this is a community.
Yes.
This is all like-minded people who all have, broad paint strokes here, but so many sensibilities that have to be the same or we wouldn't be here.
Right.
And just hearing just the moments in the shows when they drop out and the entire crowd sings it.
Sure.
Man, I'd never experienced it to this extent. And that was it. I was like, okay, well, this needs to happen more often. And then when I retired, it was able to happen more often. So now I can make those trips. So I've seen them in Philly. I've seen them in Toronto a couple of times. I've seen them in Hamilton. I've seen them in Atlanta. I've seen them in Greenville, where they played Versus straight through for the only time. Gosh, where else have I seen them? I'm forgetting now. I've seen them in Charlotte. I know there's
Sounds
more.
like you two have a lot of shows in common there.
I was at that Atlanta 2012, Charlotte 2013. Yeah.
And each time, man, I get something new from every show. I really, really do. I love seeing this band live, and I really appreciate the fact that, the set list is always changing. And I can't remember what show it was, but I just remember them shouting out, I think it was Corduroy. And I was like, they didn't have that mapped out at all. They just called it out and went into it. And that, to me, is the sign of a band.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so my brother-in-law came over the other day. I was like, Eric, he plays and really appreciates music. So he's my guy, along with my wife, because she plays piano and everything. But check this out. And it was on their Instagram feed, and they were just all smiling and laughing and just in it. And he was like, that is amazing, man. That's a band. And I was like, that's exactly what that is.
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly why we put together this show, because there are so many moments, there are so many things that you can see inside set lists and at the shows that are just incredible, unbelievable. You look at set lists from some of these other bands, the bands that go out and do the Moneymaker summer tours, like your Smashing Pumpkins and all these other bands, and I get into this mindset of, all right, well, I want to see what their set list is beforehand, and I go and I check out the set list for the day before, and I go and check out a couple other set lists, and it's very consistent. And you're almost like, okay, well, do they get bored? Do they ever come up with something new? It's 23 or so songs of the same ilk, and Pearl Jam is just like, all right, well, we open with Release, and tomorrow we're going to open with Go, so it's going to be two completely different shows.
Different moods and different, different tsunamis are going to hit you at different times. I love that. I love that you might go to an extremely powerful. I don't know if aggressive's the right word, but yeah, if you start,
they all have different identities. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I love that. And I love that I've seen, multiple, different moods and feels. And I don't know many bands that do that or can do that.
Yeah, I would say there's never been a band in history that's been this good to their fans.
Yeah,
I
and
can't
I
think of
think
one.
truly understand what a community it is, and what they've been able to create, and and what I really love too is that they appreciate it. So here's my story with the Greenville show, where they played Versus, and they got to glorify G, and I went, oh man, oh, they're gonna do this. They're gonna. So I went by myself. I just went. I got to go down to the show. It's an hour away. I'm going. I get there. There's these two young guys beside me, like 21 years old, from Birmingham, Alabama. Right? Oh, we've never seen Pearl Jam, man. We've heard like live and like Even Flow, and I'm like, okay, well, great. You're here. That's awesome. You're gonna be hooked, dude. Don't worry. So they get to glorify G, and now I'm hitting these kids, and I'm going, guys, you don't understand what's happening. Like, teeth clenched, and these poor kids are like, oh, okay, sir. Yeah, I mean, it's a really good concert. I was like, yes, but you don't understand the significance of this. And like, I'm so stoked at this point, and these poor guys are just going, oh my god, this guy's insane, but he's really into this. But by the end of the show, man, they were up on their feet. They were, just totally into it, like the rest of the audience. And and I talked to them after. I was like, so they were like, well, that won't be our last show. And
Yeah.
that's you see them and you go, okay. I saw them in Philadelphia with another wrestler. His name's Tommy Dreamer.
Hey, Tommy.
So Tommy's never really gotten into them. He's never really, much music at all, honestly. Doesn't really go to concerts. I was like, Tommy, we're going to see Pearl Jam. You're coming with me. You need to experience this. If for lack of a better term, for him to be able to relate, I said, it has a fandom like ECW, and this band has a very loyal, rabid thing, and you just need to experience it. And I, again, was singing every lyric and just, standing up at the top of my lungs. And then I look over, and now about halfway through the show, he's standing up too. He doesn't know any of the lyrics, but he's just like, yeah, all right, and he's pumped. And by the end of the show, he's wearing sweatpants, of course. And so we're leaving, and we ran into the Blue Meanie there, who is also from ECW, and he's a huge Pearl Jam fan.
Wow!
So him and I really
wrestling Pearl Jam fan right there.
There you go. There you go. Get Meanie and Becky Lynch. She's a big one too.
Yes. So, would love to.
So Tommy, we're leaving. I was like, so he goes, all right, I get it. I totally get it. That was amazing. And that is the most excitement you will get out of a Tommy Dreamer, because everything is monotone. But he was like, I totally get it. That was amazing. Thank you. and I got another one hooked, So and then I bless her heart, Beth, my wife, she is, I think at this point, 7 months pregnant. And we're up in Canada, and my buddy Mike is up there. He's a huge Pearl Jam fan as well. We met in college, and we connected on Pearl Jam and Weezer, the Blue Album. Mm-hmm. So we've remained friends, to this day, and we'll still go to shows together. So we all go to London, Ontario. Beth is so pregnant at this point. She is like an oven, just heat radiating off of her. But she's a trooper. She's like, okay, let's go. Let's do it. So we get there, and we're sitting, behind boards. So we got great seats. I mean, just perfect eye level with the band, and we're at McCready's side, right? And he's shredding, like full on, just in it. And he looked down, and at that moment, Beth was yawning. And I swear to you, he went, just tore into it even harder.
Wow.
I was like, okay, challenge accepted, because you couldn't see her belly, right?
Right.
Because the boards were blocking her belly. So you couldn't tell that this was an 8-month pregnant woman who is just tired because she's making life.
Sure.
So it was funny, because you could just see it like, all right, challenge accepted, and just continued to melt faces. But we had a blast.
Wow. So essentially, you're child has grown up on Pearl Jam before they were fully formed, which is,
Yes.
I mean, I think anybody that's a Pearl Jam fan, the minute that, you know, they have a kid, it's you know, let's get them exposed. And one of the things I'm interested in, because I've talked about it with John and how he has Lucas is 3 or 4, right?
Yeah, he'll be 4 in a couple of months.
And you were telling me that you know, you got him into Bugs because, you know, it's fun to sing. You know, I got bugs on my window, I got bugs here, I got bugs there. So
Yeah, he loves it.
But when you're a parent, and I'm newlywed, so I got a few years to get to that point. But when you're a parent and you want to expose your kids to Pearl Jam, what direction are you going in? I know you love your kids, and we see them all over your Instagram, and you know you're taking care of them. You're a good dad. I can tell just by looking at your social media, and what, you know, I know you're exposing them to Pearl Jam, so what are you exposing them to?
Well, so my daughter Lyric is 6 years old, and the first music that she could recognize and put a name to, and the way she said it was so adorable. I was like, "Who's this, honey?" She goes, "Pearl Jam."
Oh,
And when she actually started enunciating it, you know, properly, a little bit of me cried, because she's in the back seat and she goes, "Oh, it's Pearl Jam," and I just loved it. I loved, you know, hearing that, and the fact that she knew who it was, and I love that, you know, the first band that my girls both recognized was Pearl Jam, and they now know Queen and they now know Weezer. They know the Foo Fighters, but the first band that they knew was Pearl Jam, and I'm saving Pearl Jam as their first concert. So
wow.
it's got to be, right. I mean, because we all think about our first concerts, and I would love for them to be able to say, my first concert was like Pearl Jam in, I don't know, Wrigley or Fenway, or
Right.
you know what I mean? Just that classic example of what a first concert should be. Because mine was the Bare Naked Ladies in my high school cafeteria. And
How Toronto is that?
right? And they had me on the door, so I was like a / bouncer. So it's not a great first story, you know. You want it to be like Queen and Maple Leaf Gardens 1978 or something.
Sure.
So I want them to be able to say that, and I'm really looking forward to that day, because Ruby, my youngest, is 3 and she'll be 4 in May. But again, she already knows Pearl Jam, and they love the song Daughter, and I think just because they're my daughters,
Sure,
and I think on that level they just go, oh, okay, and they can sing that. And that's also my ringtone is Dissident. So
okay.
when they hear that, they just, they kind of lose their minds. And even my wife, through all the time that we were, dating and everything, she hears that song and she goes, this song's just really special to me, because I was always excited that you were going to answer the phone. And, so it's just on so many levels for our family.
That's such a all encompassing. That's an incredible way that you guys have approached it, and I can see some similarities with my family, but I think a lot of people will be able to relate to that for sure. Let me ask you. So you talked about you tore your Achilles in 2009, and we're coming on the 10-year anniversary here, and I didn't really want to bring up too much wrestling talk, but since it's the 10-year anniversary, this is a really pivotal moment in your career. You were out for a couple months, and you come back, big surprise at the Rumble. You see it 10 years later, and what's so what's going in your mind? It's Rumble season, so...
Well, and this year it's kind of funny to me, honestly. All of these rumors happening that I've been to Pittsburgh and I've been cleared to wrestle again and I've signed a new contract and I've this, and I have no idea where any of it came from. The last time I was in Pittsburgh, I had my wrist fused in 2013. I don't know. I don't know. And
Pearl Jam played in Pittsburgh 2013. Is that any connection there? I have no idea.
I didn't hit the show. No, damn it. But I would go to Pittsburgh to go see Pearl Jam for sure. But I haven't been there, and I haven't signed a contract. I think I would know. But I get like this again, I'll use tsunami of comments saying, "You're coming back. You signed a contract." I'm like, I really haven't. Oh yeah, that's what you'd say. I'm like, okay, whatever.
Hey, Pearl Jam's got a tour coming up. You need to keep your schedule free.
Right? I know. I gotta get to something this cycle for sure.
Was there anybody that you used to travel with that, you remember you put on Pearl Jam and they're just like, oh, I'm just not into it? Or people that were, gung-ho, like who are the other Pearl Jam fans from the Attitude Era or even the Ruthless Aggression era?
Well, I mean, Jay Christian, he was right in that pocket with me,
Okay.
And he really, really likes Pearl Jam. Like he saw the C&E Stadium show with Neil Young, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam.
Oh wow!
Yeah, he got to go that way. I had a show that night, and I was like, at that point, I didn't want to miss a show because it was experience and it was $50. That $50 was going to buy my next round of groceries,
Right.
So I missed out on that one. And man, to this day, again, I want to punch myself in the face, but so he appreciates, he's not as hardcore as I am, but he still appreciates, and loves that era. But he was into Soundgarden. He was into, Alice in Chains. He was really into Stone Temple Pilots, Lenny Kravitz. So that whole era for him holds a special place too, because, he was one of the guys that was living with me in that townhouse when Versus came out. So
sure.
All he heard was Versus for about, a year and a half, for me anyway.
So are you texting him during Greenville and you're like, dude, you're not going to believe this? Or
he wouldn't fully I would have to explain to him.
Okay.
Why this was a big deal, because he hasn't kept up on, okay, they played binaural in Toronto. Like he wouldn't know that.
Okay.
So I can tell him after the fact and he'll be like, oh man, that must've been a hell of a show. I was like, oh yeah, it was, and you need to come to more of them, you son of a bitch. And,
we'll drag it one of these days.
Yeah. One of these days I'll get him to one.
Their shows, they got Toronto, Hamilton, I think Ottawa, Quebec City, down by you, more Nashville, St. Louis, Baltimore. Depending on dates, I think some of them are close to WrestleMania, but you don't need to be at WrestleMania. What are you looking to go see?
I really have to see them in Seattle. I really do just need to experience that.
Seattle.
I think it'll probably be the fall. I think it'll probably be after.
Oh yeah, and I just mean in general. Like
right.
But before it's all said and done, I need to see them in Seattle. That has to happen. There has to be a sojourn for me where, maybe I start in Calgary and I just drive down the coast and make it to Seattle on time for the show. Like that kind of thing where like, honey, I just need a couple weeks, and when I come back, I'm going to be super recharged and dad of the decade. And I think we all need that at some point. And that's one thing I really like to try and do if I can.
I got a couple more things before we let you go, and we're really, again, this has been awesome. I mean, you're as much of a fan as I could have even imagined, and just so down to earth with it too. But one of the things you brought up before, how big of a fan that Becky Lynch is, and when you see she's the top this is male or female here, for people that are listening that aren't wrestling fans, she is the top person in the company right now, and she is walking to the ring. The back of her jacket, there is a stick man. So this is how Pearl Jam is being represented in WWE right now. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So when you see that, and some of your conversations with her, I'm sure you've talked to her about Pearl Jam once or twice, I'm sure. But like, how do you see that being? Yeah. So how excited are you about that?
What I find great about it is I think it speaks to the fact that they have such a female demographic to their fan base.
Oh, 100%.
And I think that goes to even just how many other bands can you think of that an all-male band has so many lyrics and songs based from the female perspective.
As some of their best, most popular songs too.
Exactly. Now, but can you think of many other bands that do that?
We've talked about it so many times before, the comparisons between what Nothing Man and Better Man are in contrast to each other. Rearview Mirror, how he is in a female mindset, and he's speaking to them just as much as he's speaking to the males with things like Blood and Corduroy. It's for everybody.
Yeah. And that's back, just to my wife real quickly, is that's one thing that really resonated with her. She didn't know that. And I said, listen to the lyrics, listen to the song, listen to the perspective it's sung from. And that really went far with her, because you just don't hear it often. And I think, going back to Becky, what I think is so cool is that they do have the female demographic and fan base. And I think that's one of the reasons why. I think, earlier on, when you would still hear the high pitched screams and Eddie was the heartthrob and all, okay, they're all good looking guys. Sure. But when you start peeling it back and listening to the music and studying the lyrics, I think that just goes so far as to why they have, that element. And then with Becky is the age, she's
my age.
30.
Yeah. I'm 33. I think she's 33 or 34, somewhere around there.
Yeah. And the fact that, how young was she when they broke? When
I was 6 in 1992. That's I didn't touch up on an album. Like, I knew them, and my brother was a huge, he was able to pass down Verses and 10 and Vitalogy to me. But I was 12 when Yield came out, and that was do the Evolution video. That was it, because I was watching the TRL and MTV at the time, and I just wanted anything that felt like rebellion. And Yield, the 3 albums that I had at my disposal at any car ride were The Offspring's Americana, Green Day's Nimrod, and Yield. And Yield, just from the other 2, completely different perspective. And I'm just like, it feels mature, but I still get this vibe of, I could still punk out with, a Brain of J, or unbelievable. I still get this like feeling of just, this atmospheric feeling with MFC, or this, one of the best driving songs you can get with Lowlight. I'm going on and on here. It's less about Becky Lynch, but again, this is about
that's what happens.
This is about the era, like she probably grew up pretty close to that too. So I'm imagining that's exactly what happened with her. I would hope. Maybe sometime we'll be able to find out.
We had her on our pod, and before we finished, I was like, okay, top 5 Pearl Jam songs, go. And I totally put her on the spot. And, I think she had Black on there, State of Love and Trust, because that was a mutual one. And after that, I honestly forget. But it's so hard to pick.
It's impossible.
It really is, because it's going to change. I'm in the mood for Corduroy today. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
Right now, Corduroy is my favorite Pearl Jam song. But tomorrow, I could sit down and just go, you know what, I need some inside job because this is the kind of day it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it can change, and I love that.
If you had to pick an entrance theme to use for Pearl Jam, and I think this was a huge miss that the Evolution stable didn't Do the Evolution. I mean, Motorhead is great and all, but you should have pitched that to Hunter. You should have went to Paul and been like, you guys ditch Motorhead. You need Do the Evolution. Even the Evolution pay-per-view that was a couple of years ago, Beth was on the call. She couldn't say to them like, hey, let's do the Evolution. Why not? They do some other song that didn't make any sense. It would have been perfect.
I will say that maybe they actually would have been cool with that for that pay-per-view.
Sure.
Because it did mean so much and it did break down, so many doors. So I could see them being cool with their music being involved with that one. Other ones, I don't know.
Would if you had one song, if you weren't using Metalingus, what would be your entrance music for Pearl Jam?
Maybe Mind Your Manners.
That's a good one.
Go, Animal.
Comatose is huge on my list, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Animal.
Animal's a good one. That would be like good Babyface, like bouncing around, high-fiving fans.
You have to get that 93 MTV Video Music Awards version.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, I can see that. I can see you doing the little bounce that you did in the ring.
Yeah, going side to side.
Yep.
I could see that.
Yeah.
I mean, Corduroy Push Me and I will resist. I mean, that's strong though.
Sure.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one.
All right. Final question here. What are you looking forward to hearing most out of the new album that's coming out this year?
I want to hear where they're at in life, but
Okay.
I have a feeling
It's a good answer.
we're going. Yeah, that's what I get from their albums, where they're at in life, and usually it seems to be on some level where I'm at in life, and I want to hear their take on it, whatever that is. How angry are they going to be about the current administration? I have no idea what we might hear, and how angry it might sound, or will it be the complete opposite of that to try and counterbalance against that? I don't know, but that's what's so amazing about it.
Sure.
What I truly believe though, it's where they're at in life. And again, that's usually where I'm at in life. So I always relate on some level.
That's perfect answer. I can't think of anything better. My immediate answer is more Stone written songs, but I can't disagree with that at all. That's a perfect answer. So, all right. We had an enormous amount of fun just talking nothing but nerding out about Pearl Jam today. And I mean, this is great because, this is not something that you hear from you all the time. You're usually talking about the wrestling and,
Yep.
and who's getting pushed. And I think we rocket strapped you to the top of the Pearl Jam fan list right there. I think we got the live on Pearl Legs rocket strap.
He knows his stuff, guys.
It was very nice to be able to talk about, so not that I don't appreciate talking about wrestling and that people want to talk to me about it. That means I did something within that industry, but it is really nice to talk about something else I love, and then just a fan of. It was fun for me.
And you can tell just by talking to you. You're reliving it just as John and I have relived it, just as other people that have come on the show, other people that we've met at shows. Like this is more than just listening to a band and enjoying music. This is a mentality. This is a life. And man, this is why we all enjoy it, and this is why we're so happy that you can come on the show and share us all your stories, and we thank you so much for this, and it's been a pleasure, and hopefully we'll get to go to some shows with you at some point in the future.
That would be cool. It really would, just to be able to go and appreciate it and soak it all in together. And want to host a show on the station at some point. I feel like I got to somehow make that happen, because I've heard, they've had celebrity hosts before, and I'm like, they kind of know their stuff. But
mine would be, yeah.
If this is, like I said, the rocket strap. I mean, look, we don't have much pull at all, but we released the Seattle '93 episode, and the next day the vaults got shipped out. So all I'm saying is, there's a chance.
If 10 Club is listening, he's out there. He's ready.
And here's what I will say too, but before I, keep you any longer, my kind of one experience in terms of Pearl Jam outside of a show or whatever, there was this thing called Cultivate Gives on Twitter. And it was this company, and they were matching dollar for dollar, however many retweets you could get. And you would pick a local company, and they would then donate the amount of retweets in dollars to that company, if that makes any sense. So there's a local company here in Asheville called Soul Hopes, SOLE Hope. And they make shoes for children in Uganda to help combat chiggers, which get into the feet and kill you. They make these shoes out of, inner tubes. So with each dollar, they can make 2 pairs of shoes. And I saw that Pearl Jam had followed me on Twitter, so I went, you know what, I gotta give this a shot. So I had retweeted it, and I said, guys, I don't even know who I'm talking to, and I hate to be that guy, but this is this thing. They retweeted it. It got like 35,000 retweets.
Wow.
Soul Hope got the money, and that's 70,000 shoes that got made for kids in Uganda. And another one of those instances where I was like, and this is what social media can be for. And it was Pearl Jam that helped facilitate it through, because once they hopped on, then it got retweeted a whole lot more. So that's kind of my one brush with whoever runs the Twitter.
They know you're out there. Look, us Pearl Jam fans, we talk, almost because we can't get enough of it. And, I've seen people, anytime Eddie is in the public eye, oh, he was on that Ellen show, you get 100 people that posted on the forum, and it just, sometimes it gets to be too much. But I've seen people post on Facebook groups and things before that have said, hey, did you know that Edge wore the shirt in, or mentioned it on the podcast? And, it gets people talking, and, you get the wrestling detractors, and then you get people being like, oh, I didn't know Edge was a Pearl Jam fan. That's awesome. I love him even more now. And it's, again, it's all encompassing. It's just, it's a beautiful thing this fandom has created. And, it doesn't get much better than, getting what that shoe company that you just mentioned got just from Pearl Jam retweeting something. Yeah. So that's
shoe incredible. The shoeless, as they say.
Oh, thank you.
They finally followed through with it.
Very well done, sir. Well, Adam, Edge, this was great. Hopefully at some point in the future we can have you on again, maybe sit down and do a show with you. And we wish you the best of luck with Vikings and not a WWE return, because that's not happening. No one ever got in touch with you on that, so
no one told me yet anyway.
But really, from the bottom of our hearts, we really, really appreciate you doing this.
Absolutely. And thank you.
This was such an awesome experience.
Oh, thanks, guys. I had a blast. Really did. Thank you.
So that was awesome. I am at a loss for words. He was such an awesome conversation, and this was somebody that I've been watching since I was a child, and to just talk to him as fan to fan was a very cool experience right there.
Yeah, like I said, he knows his stuff. He's not someone that I wasn't sure if he was one of those guys that, he just casually kind of drop in every now and then. Like,
I know who to invite on the show, John.
But, a lot of people dropped off after Versus and Vitalogy. But I think he's one of the ones. He stayed in through the hard years, the lean years, man. So I give him credit.
It was so great to have him on and have him open up like that. And, just cool to have fans that are in the same realm as us. Basically.
Yeah, hopefully we can get him to pop back in for his thoughts on Gigaton, or if he's going to hit any of the shows up. I know we've since confirmed that Nashville is happening, and Baltimore and St. Louis and things around the area. So maybe he'll stop back in sometime this summer and let us know how the shows were.
Yeah, that would be a great idea. Would love to talk to him again, obviously. So we talked a lot in this episode about Greenville, and we are going to capitalize on that. So today is Edge, tomorrow is Greenville. The full Versus show and the full show outside of Versus 2, we're going to be doing and covering that. John, you were there. Edge was there.
Fantastic.
Adam, Edge, whatever you want to call him. I feel like we should be calling him Adam, but it's okay if we call him Edge because that's what he's known by. So,
yeah, I don't think he minds.
No, I don't think so either. But
and I did not threaten to fight him.
No, that was one that you stayed away. Good job. You stayed away from that one. So we're going to have a couple of clips from Edge that we didn't get to in this episode that'll talk specifically about Greenville. And so if you want more of Edge tomorrow, Greenville 2016 should be exciting. And also, again, on our Patreon right now is extra clips from this episode that didn't make the show. Edge talking about more of his favorites from Pearl Jam and stuff he wants to see for the future. So check that out if you haven't already. Patreon.com/live-on4legs, and you get access to all of our exclusives and an opportunity to pick an episode for us to cover.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I mean, Deborah was great, and we've got some people lined up. So, yeah, thanks to all of our patrons, all of the new patrons, the old patrons. We're just so excited that people are wanting to listen to this content and getting excited about this year.
Yeah, this is a big year, and we're going to be there every step of the way. So, with that being said, we are off for this episode. So, this may be the end. We're here, but not for much longer. And although we may be parting ways, I miss you already, and I miss you always. You think you know this podcast?
Yeah, if I had a wrestling catchphrase, I would throw the one in, but I do not know any, so we'll go with that. See you guys. See you tomorrow.
Superstar. I couldn't help it. I waited till the last second to get it in, but we will see you tomorrow from Greenville.
Bye.